Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum dear students. Hope this lecture reach you in the best of your health. In our today's lecture we will cover all the vital details regarding service processes. But before that we will have an overview of our previous lecture. In our previous lecture we discussed the remaining concepts of manufacturing process. We talked about plant's layout. We discussed factors that must be considered before selecting a plant location. We further deep dived into the different types of sites. We covered urban areas, rural areas, and suburban areas. We also highlighted all the pros and cons of each site. We also covered plant layout and highlighted 4 major types of plant layouts. So that was about our previous lecture. Now the outline for our today's lecture is as. In our today's lecture, we will discuss about service processes. First, we will understand what is service or what do we mean by a service. Then we will talk about service processes. We will also discuss factors that influence service processes. And finally, different types of service processes along with examples will be covered. So let's deep dive into our today's lecture. Service. A service is an activity or benefit that one party can offer to another that is essentially intangible and does not result in the ownership of anything. Its production may or may not be tied to a physical product. Examples are educational institutes, internet service provider, and healthcare services. Service process. Service process refers to how a service is provided or delivered to a customer. Service process can be defined as the way in which a company works so that a customer receives services. To standardize this in line with company's identity and aims, manager will work on determining procedures which contribute to the process, allocating tasks and responsibilities, formulating effective schedules and routines, defining service mechanisms and process flows. Service process depends on 2 primary factors. Number 1 is the type of service process and number 2 is the degree of customer contact. So customer contact plays a very vital role in any service process. Now, another important thing here is to improve performance and to achieve optimization. Service firms need to pay special attention to the challenges associated with service process, and for that we need to understand service process matrix. Service process matrix is a classification of service industry firms based on the characteristics of individual firms' service processes. The classification characteristics include the degree of labor intensity and jointly measured degree of customer interaction. Labor intensity can be defined as the ratio of labor cost to plant and equipment. A firm whose services requires a high content of time and effort with comparatively little plant and equipment cost would be said to be labor intense. Customer interaction represents the degree to which the customer can intervene in service process. For example, a high degree of interaction would imply that the customer can demand more or less of some aspects of the services. Customization refers to the need and ability to alter the service in order to satisfy the individual customer's particular preferences. The vertical axis on the matrix is a continuum with high degree of labor intensity on one end and lower degree of labor intensity on the other end. The horizontal axis is a continuum with high degree of customer interaction on one end and lower degree of customer interaction on the other end. This results in a matrix with 4 quadrants, each with a unique combination of degree of labor intensity and customer interaction and customization. The lower left quadrant contains firms with low degree of labor intensity and low degree of interaction and customization. This quadrant is labeled as service factory. The firms in this quadrant operates in a fashion similar to factories, hence the title service factory. These firms can take advantage of economies of scale and may employ less expensive unskilled workers as do most factories. Firms classified as service factory include fast food, hotels, motels, airlines, and truck lines, etc. The upper left quadrant represents the firms with a low degree of labor intensity but high degree of interaction and customization. The upper left quadrant is labeled as service shop. Hospitals, auto repair shops, restaurants are found in this quadrant. The lower right quadrant contains a firm with a high degree of labor intensity but a low degree of interaction and customization. This quadrant is labeled mass service. Mass service providers include retail firms, wholesale firms, schools, etc. Now finally, the upper right quadrant contains firms with a high degree of labor intensity and high degree of interaction and customization. The upper right quadrant is labeled professional services. Doctors, lawyers, accountants, architects, and investment bankers are typical service providers that tend to be labor intense and have a high degree of customer interaction and customization. Now we have types of service processes. Service process can be categorized into 3 major types. Number 1 is line operations. Number 2 is job shop operations. Number 3 is intermittent operations. Now let's explore each individually. So first one is line operations. Line operations progress in a linear fashion. The client passes through a sequential experience beginning at point A when they first enter the store and contact the business. This type of service process is the easiest to automate because it is so standardized. Every customer has a similar customer experience and the service process does not vary. ATM, a self-service restaurant, typifies this type of process. Although this is perhaps the simplest of the service processes to understand, it has several drawbacks. If one client in the linear operation is flawed or bottlenecked, the client will judge the service as whole based on this weakness. Next we have job shop operations. A job shop operation produces a variety of services using different combinations and sequences of activities. The service can be tailored to meet varying customer needs and to provide a bespoke service. Restaurants and professional services are examples of job shop operations. While flexibility is a key advantage of this type of system, it may suffer being more difficult to schedule, from being more difficult to substitute capital for labor in the system, and for being more difficult to calculate the capacity of the system. And if we talk about intermittent operations, then intermittent operations refer to the service projects which are one-off or only infrequently repeated. Examples include construction of new service facility or installation of a large computer, or it can be the designing of an advertising campaign or making of a major film. The scale of such projects makes their management a complex task. So as we have discussed all the important details regarding service processes, now your task is to comment in the comment box about the customer service trends that are necessary for the success. So that was our today's lecture. Let's wrap up what we have studied today. The topic of our today's discussion was service process. First we defined the term service. Then we explored about the service processes. We also highlighted the factors that influence the service process. We also discussed service process matrix in detail, and lastly we talked about different types of service processes. So that was our today's lecture. See you inshallah in our next lecture. Till then, take care. Allah Hafiz.